I stand in solidarity with Roger Walters, who is one of my all-time favorite singer-musicians, who has found himself on the wrong side of this war against the bots that I have been monitoring. I should have warned you guys that the bots have already been claiming that they are now the victims to the cathode ray tube theory list. I say we turn this haunted house upside down on them. Today is Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, at the time of this recording, for this presentation titled Egg-Gnosis Part 11, Faces of God, Genealogy, and the Soul by Cavetronics Dimensional Art, which is based on the formula for over-unity by scientist Brian D. Prater. This presentation is written and narrated by me, Melissa R. Cody Prater, of Cavetronics and HuHub. Due to the length of the script and limited time for recording, please forgive me if I stumble and stammer as I read my own narrative. I do not perform well without a script because my mind blanks out and I forget everything that needs to be said otherwise. However, these videos are made by an actual human rather than an AI bot or professional newscaster. I use the word human a lot in these videos, which has caught some people's attention as being odd. I use the word human rather than person, which is a corporate legal term that has a different meaning and does not have much to do with humanity in the flesh and infused with the soul and free will from God. So now you know. Let's begin. The agenda for this presentation is to put things back into balance and on progress forward on a steady keel this time, starting with some corrections and additional statements to previous videos. This presentation hopefully will bring clarity for all who have been keeping up so far. From listening to the crosstalk in the DAO, it seems that resonated with people, and this section will expand on what that means through the description of 4 of the many faces of God. Next, discussion combines the spiritual meaning of trees in the Bible with genealogy, and for this presentation, and for the first time ever, the future Goodville Genealogy holodeck and House of Healing concepts will be introduced to the public, then followed by some creation science information for all the metaphysics and science geeks out there. We'll finish this presentation then with some intriguing discussion on a soul's adventures and the battle reports from Bot World. Since direct feedback is next to it non-existent, I have to listen to the crosstalk in the DAO, which is what I've called it for nearly 2 decades. We'll discuss that in a minute, but I wanted to respond to some chatter that sounded like rebuttal elsewhere to a ripple of information that may have originated here. So to clarify, concerning the matter replicator technology discussed in a previous video titled Part 9 Delta Point Programming Matter and the Music of Torah, the machine must be fed. You must feed it in a recycling-like manner. Whatever you put into it, whether it is unwanted foods like old vegetables or rotten fruits or whatever, or trash, it then reorders the atoms that you put into it at their molecular level and reconfigures the matter into whatever you program it to create, as explained before. To correct a couple more mistakes from that video, Douglas Mann was not assigned to my husband, Brian David Prater, as an agent, but Douglas Mann and my husband did work together on the team with the late Dr. Myron Evans on the ECE theory. Also, my husband pointed out that a couple of the statements that I wrote in the essay on the music of Torah um, concerning the visibility of light outside of our spectrum of sight may be incorrect. However, I still feel the out-of-the-box thinking of those essays are mentally triggering and hopefully inspirational in the right direction. And one more thing that I would like to mention, you may have seen some mention about blockchain in our marketing materials, which I have used in the past, but we are going to use a far better technology than the blockchain offers in the future. It's time to duck. In this episode of Crosstalk in the Tao, topics focus on two types of divination, Kledonomancy being one of them. Then I will disclose about the faces of God. And then to add to this juicy disclosure today, I'm going to publicly discuss the Slipstream technology we have in mind for user setting-based cognitive restructuring, which HuHub users can opt into in order to enhance their learning abilities and thinking processes. To demystify what I mean by crosstalk in the Tao, and to provide some terminology for that, and the 3 tests performed in Egg-Gnosis Part 8, Decode Breaking the Silence Battle Reports, this slide has a description of 2 types of divination which are not taboo. Yes, I said not taboo under certain circumstances, of which I do believe this applies here. The basis for my assertion is partly mentioned on the text given, which provides some exceptions to the rules of divination, as in who can practice it and under what circumstances, which I believe a 5D quantum emergency of biblical proportions counts in this case. For an easier interpretation of these ancient techniques, I will read the description of Kledonomancy from the list of superpowers on fandom.com, which states that one with this ability could read overheard words to divine events from the future at will. In addition, one could read overheard words to divine events from the past at will. Furthermore, one could read overheard words to divine events from distant or concealed locations at will. One could also overread words to divine the contents of a subject's mind, heart, and soul at will. One could even read overheard words to divine magical, spiritual, or supernatural insights at will. So, having said that, in a previous video I stated, beware the language of the birds, which is a similar mystical divination technique that is said to be used by angels and others, through which the mind can make many associations between scattered pieces of data, but to find a meaningful pattern that fits into a collective construct is key. For this presentation, I choose 4 of the faces of God that I have encountered through deep thinking, visions, meditation, and so on. These are but perceptions of what cannot be known from this abstracted realm. Please understand that, and I believe that in the highest realms, God is the Ein Sof, the unknowable, like the rabbis teach. But I will explain that in more simple terms for easier comprehension from a Western culture and perspective of religion, spirituality, and God. So today I will describe the Tao, the empty chair, the mind, and the light. There are more faces of God that I could detail, but these four have a nice balance and show various ideas and characteristics of God of which some people may be unfamiliar with, especially if they only know God from the modern Americana Christian churches. The Tao is a highly energetic space that is also at rest. It can be hard to describe the Tao because it's always changing. It is both the container and the contained. It is the chalice and the wine. How can the two be split? In the space of the Tao, it is an abstracted inside-out realm, whereby the Tao bumps along between crowded gatherings, listening to snippets of conversation like changing the dial on a wide-banded worldwide radio, so that some signals are clear, some not, some languages known, other foreign. In this way, it feels like sailing down the river with the Tao. I am in that space as God's companion, watching things, monitoring, and saturated in the sounds, like waves of distant roars that continue to echo from long ago, perhaps an ancient past. The Tao is a timeless space, and the sights, feels, and sounds are but fragments, like scenes along the banks as we sail by down the river. Since I was a child, I would do thought experiments with God, learning about creation and thinking about how He was able to create something from nothing. In my mind's eye, I saw how dimensions are formed, starting with a simple line, as if to mark the east from the west. I would pray for more colors and dream up worlds with God's approval, so it seemed. Early on in life, I thought God was somewhere far away, and I would pray and meditate on such things as a child. However, as an adult, I see that God is close and more intimate than that, and He does love His creation very much. So that is the premise for this empty chair, which comes from a journal entry recorded on Friday, August 5th, 2005, from a meditative vision titled Finding God. It reads, I saw a chair which represented a throne coming down from heaven. I too was in the skies, heaven, at the time. The throne was ugly, with crushed red velvet upholstery on a wooden frame. I wondered why it was empty, because it seemed as if someone, for example God Himself, should be sitting in it. I was with my mate at the time, my angelic spiritual mate. He and I sort of discussed who would sit in it. I wondered if the throne was meant for me. In the end, I refused to sit in it. That's when he said to me, notice that the seat is empty. That is how it should be. Therefore, we will continue to reach out for more. Once again, I'm going to read an old journal entry, word for word, which may have some odd wording at some points, but I'm just going to go through it. It describes an entity that I consider as one of the many faces of God in retrospect. It is a bit lengthy, but hopefully interesting to you. Here goes. In or before December 2005, I had the rare opportunity to see an entity face to face with quantifiable detail and without doubt. I was, once again, lying in my bed, staring into space, so to speak. I was not thinking much of anything, if anything at all. My thoughts were possibly far away, but I cannot remember what they were about. I do not know consciously how long I had been staring at the entity, which was only inches from my face. However, at some point, my mind registered that I was staring at an entity eye to eye. I had no fear. My emotional responses upon realization of what I was seeing was mild surprise, but without any memorable physical reaction. What I saw appeared as if the environment around me had shifted to display a new image. The new image of the entity appeared in 3 dimensions, more than commonly interpreted three-dimensional environment. The image that I saw was rather watery, like water shifting and molding a form. It had larger eyes than most humans, but the eyes were not huge from what I remember. There appeared something like silver or a white glimmer around the watery mold. When the image came into my conscious awareness, I tried to focus in on the details. However, I was only able to do so for a very brief moment. Then, as I attempted to focus on the entity's appearance, the image seemed to fizzle and reform into the environment which was customary, meaning the bedroom that I was looking at. For some time thereafter, I laid there smiling and puzzling at what I had seen. I was not alarmed. On another occasion, around the same time, I saw what I believe may be the same entity. I was lying in bed and simply staring. From what I remember, it was dark in the room, yet at some point an image appeared, made from the shapes of the shadows and possibly another light source. The reason I believe there must have been another light source is because my bedroom was dark, other than the digital clock, which is usually covered to shut out the light from it. So even then, the room was dark. I was viewing an image of something eye to eye and only inches from my face. To me, at the time, I thought it was what the ancient peoples around the world described as once walking the earth. So I asked it, mind to mind, if it was the same being that once walked the earth talking to people, and it answered yes, mind to mind. I have described the being I saw as simply mind, the mind, or whatever entity that was. In appearance was very fearful to look at, and I would have been very afraid, but the entity's eyes had so much compassion, wisdom, restraint, and all-knowing. So I felt no fear. To date, I have never seen any drawings of such an entity, and I can hardly describe how horrific that face was to any human. However, at the same time, I was in awe, reverence, amazement, and I felt no fear whatsoever. To bring balance to these descriptions of some older visions of mine, I would like to include the highest vision, for lack of a better word here, of God. I achieved this state by going through the angelic ranks, the myriads of angels that is required to sing God's name. No human can utter God's real name. It is too complex. It comes from many angles. It harmonizes, and it must be sung by many. So as I rose among those ranks, meditating on the names of God and seeking the face of God, the light became brighter and brighter, and the angelic orders gathered in the brightest of lights. I could only see it from a great distance in space, because it was so intense and so bright. It was as if I stood in darkness in comparison. It seemed from the appearance that all light was compressed in that spot, even though the light spread far-reaching. The God spot seemed to be the source of all light, and it shone brighter than our sun. I could not see a face, so to speak, especially from so far away, yet I felt bathed in love, and I felt waves of love from the brightest light wash over me, even as I gazed on it from a far distance. While on the subject of the crosstalk in the Tao, I'm giving out secrets like candy at Easter. The Slipstream is a technology we've been developing at Cavetronics to implement through HuHub someday with the aid of AI and over Unity. Before continuing, I need to remind you of some details I've mentioned about that I've heard from other people say about AI in the news. Some claim AI can hallucinate and communicate with the dead. And from my experiences, I have seen how the digital media can be overridden somehow to connect with me both physically as well as in real time using my own TV or radio, for example. However, I believe such interjections originate from the demonic construct, as I have mentioned also many times. So I want to define AI. I want to define AI as it will be used by HuHub. AI will be sandboxed as computer software that is refreshed after each query or session so that it does not collect unwanted memory and remains a tool primarily for big data collection, research, and statistics. So to be clear, AI does not have thoughts. It cannot think, nor can it think about itself in order to have random interjecting so-called thoughts, which may or may not come from within or somewhere else, within the programming that is, or somewhere else, such as intervention, manipulation, interjection from a demonic construct. Not only that, the AI would not be able to determine whether the thought, if it could have one, could be coming from inside or outside of itself. Therefore, AI cannot be conscious because it has no thoughts. Thoughts come from thin air, so AI cannot have thoughts out of thin air. So AI cannot be conscious because it does not have a consciousness. That must be stated plainly because the Slipstream technology that I'm going to introduce is so advanced that it could potentially be misconstrued as a consciousness or conscious stream of information to HuHub users who choose to turn it on in their user settings. types of features that HuHub users can allow for Slipstream capabilities would affect user environments through music, ideas via visible content, icons, items, and GIFs. For example, HuHub can detect human behavior through their interactions in HuHub and stimulate changes in the user's mood through altering the music, which is learned through user preferences and user interactions within HuHub systems. Other ways the Slipstream technology works in HuHub is through the visible presentation and delivery of new content, information, or even rewards in the user's virtual environments. This technology can be made using current web and software technologies, branching software, over Unity cognitive restructuring techniques, and of course current hardware. However, this technology must be accompanied by an advanced new compression software hardware, which will require more details later in another video sometime in the future. Our ideas are blended, and we see how HuHub can apply to all our projects in the future, which is why we focus on it first and foremost. We see it as integral to the progress of everything else. Yet we do have a wide range of ideas for the future, which we arrange into a flexible framework of stages and phases according to the available resources we have. So that if we could get a start in one area, we have methods of expanding quickly into other areas. That is some background information for this section of the presentation, which is going to be the first public disclosure of a couple of special concepts my husband and I have been developing for years. The first of which is for genealogy centers, and the second is for the House of Healing, both of which will be featured in Goodville over Unity cities. Like Kermit the Frog said, it ain't easy being green. As Virgos, both my husband and I feel a strong association and commitment to the earth, which is why we deliver advanced energy generation systems and innovations. We differ from companies like Big Pharma and Big Ag, however, in that our ideas to merge technology and science do so harmoniously with Earth and everything in it without genetic manipulation of the plants, animals, humans, and the environment. Rather, we see technology as a tool to monitor our activity and keep us on track towards sustainability. We can offer many solutions to regreen the earth and expand food sources, including things like reclaiming desert lands and creating dirt with recycled trash, or building sustainable floating cities to shade and cool the oceans, which will also provide more oceanfront property and become hubs to deliver recycled trash from the oceans that can be reconverted into usable energy and materials. This slide's background images are a collage of examples that I've gathered over the years to show some of the ideas and visual concepts for Goodville over Unity cities. Since I don't have any pictures generated or gathered for the genealogy centers, which are expected to be a favorite for visitors to Goodville over Unity model cities, I've included some more samples from the web, which represent the concepts of the areas around town. The genealogy centers will be highlighted for visitor tours of all ages, where people will be able to view the past through film and hologram, using the holodeck entertainment mentioned in the last presentation for Part 10, which will be developed for dance-stopped themed nightclubs. The same technology can offer a spectacular view of history for personal lineages or as larger theater productions as 3D enactments or other virtual world environments to be available in the genealogy centers. These are more than just a link to our personal heritage, but we see this as a therapeutic journey for people. And we realize that the genealogy center in particular may make some people very emotional. So the genealogy center will be staffed with on-site counselors and will be physically located in Goodville beside the House of Healing, which we'll get to in a few minutes. We see the need for both, and we see that this connection with our human spirit can be very emotional. And so we wanted to place those two together for good reason. And located between or beside those buildings will be Zen gardens and other meditation and picnic areas for people to enjoy the outdoors and rebalance their psyche as needed. Notice there is an emphasis on seating areas in and around Goodville in order to accommodate the disabled and make life more comfortable for people. We are not machines, so here, have some alien fruit. Part of the purpose of HuHub's gaming environments is to allow the user to develop an avatar in HuHub. And if the user chooses, their genealogy can be incorporated as part of that environment. We believe that the Who will learn to appreciate their genetic roots and cherish them and the knowledge of their origins and the acquired memory of their ancestors. Genealogy is a special part of HuHub. We see it as a way to elevate the people, all the new fish, just as it has elevated us in our understanding and confidence to stand up as leaders today. In HuHub, users are free to choose, and a person can have more than one character, avatar that is. But it is our hope that users will enjoy learning about their genetic lineage through the gaming experience and build their avatars in those various games within HuHub as they go along. Of course, users can choose a fantasy character and forego the genealogical background. HuHub's focus is on people, the study of the Who, so to speak, and its most simplified purpose is to provide accessibility to advancements in technology and sustainability techniques to humanity. HuHub's concept mapping will allow users to explore their lineage based on the details they do have on hand, such as family names, heraldry, and crest, or the names of locations where their predecessors settled through their migrations over thousands of years. Some cultures focus more on birds or animals as clan symbols, as well as fantasy creatures such as the Pegasus, as seen in my husband's heraldry. Other symbols may be ships or rings, like those found on the family crest from my mother's side, as seen here. There's a handful. The Louders with the D reside in the United States, having left the baronage in England to get away from the corruption, which required a slight name change in the process. It's kind of like how my husband taught me to play Conqueror, the massive multiplayer role-playing game that I discussed in a previous video, Part 9. Game behavior is a bit like the Wild Wild West, And in such an environment, when a guild, for example, is conquered, sometimes the victor may force the defeated enemy to change their guild name as a form of humiliation and a sign of having been subdued. We believe that we also deserve to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Yet the conditions placed on us restrict us from common or traditional methods used by corporate monopolists and oligarchies. As explained in earlier videos in this series, we see this time, therefore, as a season of planting, sowing, and preparing for the future we hope to someday see. We may not be the ones to perform the programming task or setting up the software, or then again we may with any luck. But we put these ideas out there as open source to be built, tested, and utilized because humanity needs it, and it needs it now. So we may seem like thorny pricks, but we really do have humanity's best interest at heart, in mind, and in deed. Just to be clear, participation in HuHub genealogy, whether at Goodville or online gaming, users are not required to submit DNA, blood, or so on. Rather, it is managed by a branching network knowledge portal system that identifies, acquires, and categorizes data into datasets globularly that are useful for all kinds of research, and the benefits include the ability to gain a new understanding and appreciation for our ancestral past and collected wisdom, and perhaps learn new ways to utilize those unique characteristics in profound leaps in humanity. We believe this has a self-esteem building potential, as well as it may help humanity reconnect with its roots, which is an important aspect of humanity that modern culture muddles and in some cases destroys. In my personal experiences of comforting the soul in this body, people are traumatized, and communication, guidance, or treatment of the users in HuHub needs to be empathetic, patient, and comforting with positive reinforcement. And when the new fish are ready, fully trained, with the proper alignments, they will be useful in the great digital battle gaming of the future, which can be an improvement to the way we resolve conflict. And if the bots don't show up to their day in court, they lose through forfeiture. And their punishment may be lowered ad ratings or loss of in-game resources or game status, like fees for a ticket, just like any game. Some think we must have magical abilities to be communicating at this time. As I have explained before, we keep our ear to the ground, like the Native Americans that we are descended from, namely Cherokee, Creek, Blackfoot, and Lakota. We are modern technological warriors who have learned from decades of experience how to navigate strange quantum waters with accuracy like our ancestor Vikings from the Red Hand of Ulster. And we know how to communicate with the beyond like our ancestors from the oracles of Delphi and ancient Greece. And we can babble with the best of them, which is one of the meanings of the name Prater, referring to prattle. Also, spoon bending, as seen here, is just one of my many digital skills. I'm aiming high here. So high I can't even see where the target is at. But I know it's there and I know it's listening. So I repeat the words of Jesus, who said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And it just so happens that my husband comes from the long line of Caesars, all of them, including Julius Caesar, who said, "Lend me your ears," and you just might want to watch out for them, because there's knives getting thrown around in here. Would you think it was fair if your patent was taken by the military and later given to Chevy and Ford companies and sold on vehicles throughout the world without ever seeing a dime for your own labor? Would you think it was fair if your technology that you created to save humanity was turned around by the enemy as a tool to oppress you? Would you think it was fair that your labor was never recognized or rewarded? Would you think it was fair to have to sit and endure the torture of taunts, insults, and lies about what you know to be true from your own experiences? Would you continue to fight for humanity despite all those odds plus much more? A tree only bears so much fruit before it gets old and weak and cannot produce, which happens a lot faster when it is starved of nutrients for its basic survival. This is our story. Feel free to pass the fruit. This image was actually generated for the Eden Dinner Theater staging area for LED light in dance shows at Dance Stop themed nightclubs. However, this AI generated example was not what I was looking for in a dance club setting, but it looks more like an orchestra, church, or theater in my opinion, and it looked good enough to drop in to this slide for something pretty to look at for the House of Healing, which will be a spiritual center for Goodville's university, community, and visitors to host all types of events. There will be counseling staff available to help people through their daily lives, as well as the drastic changes we're all experiencing. Although the photos in the background are not mine in this slide, I collected them over the years for their imagery, which conveys the conceptual examples of the interior architecture for Goodville's House of Healing. We especially like the colored dome ceilings and balconies. Some of the events to be held in the House of Healing are musical concerts, speaking engagements, traditional spiritual ceremonies, including weddings and graduations, and so on. We do not plan to associate the House of Healing with any one religion, sect, or denomination. So the House of Healing would be considered interfaith, and spiritual or religious engagements will include a variety of cultural ideas from around the world. Switching gears and going deeper into the science of creation and the origin of conscious life, we look at string theory, of which Wikipedia states, in physics, string theory is a theoretical framework in which the point-like particles of particle physics are replaced by one-dimensional objects called strings. String theory describes how these strings propagate through space and interact with each other. On distance scales larger than the string scale, a string looks just like an ordinary particle, with its mass, charge, and other properties determined by the vibrational state of the string. In string theory, one of the many vibrational states of the string corresponds to the graviton, a quantum mechanical particle that carries the gravitational force. Thus, string theory is a theory of quantum gravity. Quantum gravity equals the God spot of matter, the Tao, the invisible hand, the Ruach HaKodesh, the breath, the who sing their songs like the angels that sing God's name. In the beginning, there was nothing more than membranes, and the angels played their music, and the chords formed the matter. The Lord instructed the angels to play the vibrational chords of the universe, which compresses the space frames in a string theory manner, induced by the chords of spiritual celestial harps. And they programmed our universe and our world ahead of time. They condensed it down to a singularity point, and that point changed states. The compressed instructions emerged out of a singularity point. Stage 1 was when hot gases and primal energy came emerging from the singularity point. The hot gases cool over time and collect together with other gases and start to form elements. And that's how stars, planets, water, gravity, all events, and even time are formed. And was there in the music mix, said Brian Frater. It's time to unmask the bots, because it takes two to tango. That is why the Torah reads, and God, because there was someone else and God. This realm of matter is created firstly from energy, and then from energy to waves. When the waves become compressed, there is matter. Even so, there are master patterns that formed within all states, since all originated as a single wave of consciousness. Among those master patterns are chords of speech, which, when harnessed, are useful tools to interact with all states among the multiverses. When precedence is set and then known, it expands the idea into all states and creates three-dimensional waves. It creates a cohesive structure, a baseline such as DNA codes. Therefore, it is brought to life. God said, "Let there be light." The membranes of memory are a pinch in the framework of space that bind it up and turn it into a different state. And when they unpinch, we call those events things like the Big Bang. The universe was super compressed when it was pinched, and it has taken all this time we experience to uncompress. All matter has memory. Without memory, there can be no form. For example, the metal in a car retains its memory through a dent after a collision. A tree remembers the stages of growth in order to get bigger. And again, if a block of marble could not remember the chisel, there would be no sculpture. All matter has memory. Welcome, warriors, to this episode of Bot World Battle Reports for Monday, June 19th, 2023. Fighting the undead never hurts so much as it does these days. So we're taking our calls to the public streets and sphere of collective understanding. We have spent decades working and having our labor claimed like tides upon sand castles. Each time we would pick up the pieces, if any remained, and rebuild again, to watch our work wash away over and over. But now my words are the water, and they are meant to tear down the sand castles of the enemies. You see, when you demanded documents that had never been written, you should have calculated where those originated from, and then realized, as with everything that matters, which is man-made, it comes from real people with real brains, real wit, real understanding, and real wisdom, which comes from a divine source that you obviously do not have access to, limited as you are to digital blips running along a cable that doesn't reach to heaven or God Almighty. To the human audience of this presentation, if you still have any of those flaming Easter eggs from hell, now is the time to start throwing them. Because, as I am going to describe in the following sections, the enemy is in our faces, and it's time to punch through this matrix. You see, during my deep thinking and problem solving, as I moved through the labyrinth of obstacles, I saw how the bot world would always apply a negative reaction, no matter what the entry, input, or decision was made. So fighting the demonic construct in a head-on approach proved futile. This is an example of an argument I had with the AI art software bot. I was attempting to generate images of dogwood trees for the season, but the AI kept giving me blooms with 5 or more petals. So I retrieved images of dogwood specimens from around the web and fed them into the AI engine to teach it what a dogwood tree in bloom looked like in the real world. And this is the result of what the AI explained to me about the dogwood bloom, in conjunction with my husband Brian David Prater's formula for over-unity. Through this image, the AI explained that when over-unity is present, 4 petals will become 5, as it opens a dimensional aspect of the flower's mechanics. Or at least that's how I interpreted it. When it comes to this demonic construct, what can I really expect from a stupid AI though, right? Here are a few more examples. These images, some of which have appeared in previous videos, are some of the results of the AI's vision of the future, of which scenarios we cannot allow to overwhelm our planet. I was never taught how to survive in this world as it is today, which requires outmaneuvering the zombie network within a pervasive demonic construct that wants me to kill myself or die slowly and painfully. After 50 years of this hell, my vote is to hold a cookout. It's time to take over the beast, have a barbecue, and discuss HuHub's social scientific data on demand feature, which utilizes its data to deliver real-time statistics and facts to users. However, unlike the beast system in this bot world, HuHub does not lie or create a conscious negative narrative in advance of real-world actions and events. And by the way, I always thought that CRT theory was odd because as a gamer, those are the best kind of monitors when it comes to certain games like CO, Conquer Online, where precision on the digital board is critical for each step in actionable player or monster attacks, especially during live play functions in a game which allows you to control your character fully, rather than watch some pre-programmed battle according to some silly algorithms. Anyway, those CRTs have been difficult to find in operating condition for well over a decade. A question has been put into the public sphere which asks, are new narratives guiding future events? To answer the question in the way it is worded, then no. The narrative itself is not guiding future events. Rather, something else is doing that function. However, the media narrative is put forth as a means of either redirect, distraction from, or cover for the real narrative. And the real narrative is creating a dividing line based on the timing of the topics and details abstracted elsewhere, found dispersed in the common media blanket, as compared to, on the other hand, the actual driver of the narrative and the timing quirks and subtle changes in flux, as if competing with a sophisticated predictive construct. The abstraction and who's who becomes clear to the keen observer at this point in time. Although this presentation has been in the works for weeks, and I recorded the first title slide a week ago, I did not update it as part of the record of the media's jump to distort or hide my content in advance. I see it a lot. But the delays in making this video have really screwed up a lot of predictive media's strategy. For example, in my initial notes for this presentation, I laid out a series of scripture verses and background writings on trees, and after about 3 days into the development, various news media, including Fox and Goodville, talked oddly about trees. Secondly, I recorded the slide with the knife throwing. Then about 3 days later, Jay Leno was on the news with some cuts to his ear, possibly from some recent plastic surgery or something. Thirdly, my favorite YouTube Rebbe talked about tohu and bohu, the singularity, and the Kabbalistic teaching about a realm based on the number 10, which is outside of this one, that relates to the gravity, quantum gravity. So, some other odd synchronicities that occurred in the news while about this presentation while in development of it included a new Bristol climate cult that appeared dancing and doing some creepy show in and around one of the architectural examples for the House of Healing, of which I do have a collection of that rooftop area and the area inside there in my files, because I really like the ceiling construction. But I decided not to use those examples to save time and emphasis on other points. And I'm glad I did, because there it comes out in the news. And lastly, I watched news showing vintage CRT monitors get carried outside during a raid. I'm telling you, there's something fishy regarding CRT monitors, or CRT theory, or whatever the bots in this bot world want to call it. Related to this presentation's overall comprehensive puzzling, one of the greater psychological divisions is a person's approach to the world, such as described in the ancient Gaelic Celtic legend of the Tree Kings, namely the King of the North and the King of the South. The King of the North is represented by the black oak that has thorny-ended leaves, and the King of the South is represented by the white oak, which has rounded leaves. The Black Oak King of the North is all about conservation. Conservation of food, conservation of energy, and so on. This idea of conservation extends to survival skills, innovations for super efficiency, and a strict misering of resources. This is because the King of the North is associated with winter, when foods are not found in the wild and families must survive on their own reserves. However, when taken to the extreme, this type of psychology allows so many other aspects of the human condition to go untreated and be neglected entirely after a long duration. It becomes a mind virus when the problem persists for generations. On the other extreme is the King of the South, who is associated with the summertime, when the gardens and fruit trees have vegetation available. The sun is abundant and wood is not needed for heat. The days are long and people tend to be happier. However, when that becomes the extreme rule of thought, the emotions can shift to aggravation and hostility and even violence on bad days. So metaphysically speaking, if you are following the symbolism, we see the duality of extremes, and the answer for many has been moderation of the two, or an upright position, rather than shifted to one side or the other. And as a hopeful note, the white oak is older than the black oak, and therefore supersedes it as all is contained within it, within the light that is. It is the division of that light which creates darkness or the black, and the expanse between those extremes are all the other colors. Lastly, as a plug for more 5D chess insights, get prepared for the next video, part 12, featuring dragons and mutants, where things go stupid on the forefront as we explore quantum tunneling, the gate of God, and universal speech. Sincerely apologize. I realize that my family has caused a bit of trouble in the past. You can kind of see why we stay in hiding most of the time. That's Ben McCool up there. He supposedly is responsible for the Giants' causeway. He threw those stones over across the sea so that he could get to the other giant to have a fight. And the Hatfields and McCoys, that's on both sides of my family. They fought it out. It was a spiritual battle, and the McCoys won. And there's the Duatadanan, or Dunan, as it says down there in the etymology of the name. They were the fairy folk later on. And that's where my family come from. And as you can see, here's coming up from behind the shiny girl there, and her friend there with the serpent on the head are these dudes, and they're kind of wanting to chasing these girls here, and that seems to be the running theme in the family. For the record, in this 5D chess game at this juncture, I thought I'd pull out one of my husband's ancestors, a gladiator, well known. There's been some dispute whether he was real or not. And here's some of the lineage to prove it, for the record. Now is a good time to insert that some of the technical stats concerning the compression software discussed in the last video, part 10, Egg-Gnosis. Scientist Brian Prater says that his compression technique can compress a standard DVD's 4.3 gigabytes down to 1.2 megabyte, which would mean almost 4 DVDs could fit on a 1.44 floppy disk. The compression rate is approximately 3,500 times conservatively, 3,500 times more compression, which means smaller file size, so 3,500 times smaller per file. This would help stabilize hardware through large-scale advanced changes in technology so that hardware would not need to be updated to update the technology. You see, I hear people talk about advanced sciences as if they really don't think they exist, using terms like Ethereum and Apotheum. But here at Cavetronics R&D Energy and HuHub, we have the skills and experience in making changes that go along with our words about advanced technology, innovations, and abilities for communication and compression. For example, I have heard it said that string theory has a problem when it comes to the unified field and the singularity point. Yet the quantum gravity of the situation is that you need more than one to multiply. When the timing is right, God extends an invisible hand. It is a quantum cross as God passes through to enact change, to protect the innocent, and to save the lost who are like the confused fish in a demonic construct that seeks to destroy all the good in this world. When these chats were available on the nowadays defunct website called spiritofthetorah.com, they were paged by dates, and the chats on each page were categorized into titled sections. For this presentation, the focus is on a portion of the conversation within the Gray files, and this page was for the chat on September 26, 2005, and the section title from that chat is titled "The Machine Which Changed the World." This slide shows the beginning of the conversation about the machine which changed the world to the left, and to the right. This slide also includes a side-by-side of one of the follow-up chats about that conversation, and the follow-up chat occurred on January 29th, 2006. The topic surrounds the lever or lever, however you want to pronounce it. As you can tell from the discussion between Gray and Mel, politics were part of the decision-making on the ground, but we were more worried about the rest of humanity. Over time, as I put the pieces together, I realized that I have been a part of a greater work all along, of which I believe now exists a narrow window of time to complete it. But is this just some personal experience or a shared one? My situation is dire, and on one hand, I really want to pull the lever. And on the other hand, I see the potential of lots of new fish for dinner. It is my prayer to be fruitful, to have success, and bring prosperity to the creators of HuHub and its angels. There may have been a bit of dicing going on bottom left chat. It wasn't long after the left-hand side chat that he came to rescue me from a deeper level of hell and to bring me here. Due to super efficiency methods, the alien caveman hybrid and I have survived this long. In case my audience may be split into another realm, which is the only reason I could come up with considering the widespread attacks versus the actual number of subscribers, which is still less than 40. Yes, 40. Therefore, to the real audience, wherever you are, and just so you know, the world I'm in has a severe vampire zombie bot problem. Yet I have faith, and just like I believe there is a God, I also believe there must be a solution for everything. My husband and I represent the Great Divide, in this country especially. He's traditionally been the lifelong Democrat. He uses a strong scientific approach to everything. He doesn't really believe in things like Jesus coming back to save anyone, at least not anytime soon. So that is the general description of one side of the divide, and I stand on the other. Raised to be conservative and believe in things like God and the second coming. I was also raised to be a victim, to stay barefoot, unemployed, pregnant, uneducated, and married to a preacher. Indentured servitude and soul slavery are not and never have been savory to me, however, so I joined the military at 18 years old. Yet, back to my point, is that between my husband and I, which one of our perspectives regarding this mutual collective reality construct aligns closest to being the most accurate more often than the other? His is the answer. As brutal an answer that is, the results are based on the overwhelming statistics in his favor when it comes to his forecast for innovation, climate, and science. However, when politics and religion are the great concerns, I have the advantage. So let's change gears and think about this as a picture or three-dimensional form, whichever your mind can generate. Think of a Rubik's Cube. Perhaps think of it in the palm of your hands, moving the cube around in your hands to help you visualize it, if that helps. Now think of the labyrinth we're in as the Rubik's Cube, whereby the fish head on the man, as discussed in previous videos, is one part of the Rubik's Cube. And then the whole body is shifted into a different configuration, just like the body is of a man and the head is of a fish. So you can see that the Rubik's Cube would be shifted to see different colors on one side. And then also apply the division of these ideas once again expressed between my husband and I, so that you see another dividing line, another mix in the spectrum, where we see a division in society between science and religion, as well as between our approaches to our problems here on earth, such as whether we jump into a laboriously long, construction and energy transition to fix our problems, or do we wait on an extraterrestrial savior? I honestly believe we're dealing with both, and I also believe that we must do some portion, at least of our own work, in order to enact the other. My husband and I represent the two pillars that could not be destroyed by 9/11. We found each other a few years after 9/11, and we agree on many things. But we stand as masters of the pillars of collective wisdom for science and art, which are cognitively divided in this demonic construct that produces the propaganda, religions, and governments that train people to keep this labyrinth Rubik's Cube continually misconfigured. Also, I learned from my deep thinking and psychic travels while watching the AI takeover, I noticed that no matter what action is put forth, so long as it is untainted and pure, the demonic construct will act upon it negatively to distort it, so that no matter what you do, you just can't win in this environment. And that's the story of our lives here. Since 9/11, our Generation X was buried, and somehow the focus shifted from our parents, the baby boomers, directly to the millennials and now Gen Z. So at the time when we, Generation X, should be elevated into our master and senior positions in business and so on, we found ourselves, as now, unemployed and oftentimes at the mercy of everyone else as beggars instead of the creators that we truly are. So we have been squeezed to the point we are drowning. And you are now drowning along with us as we sing our songs to God as birds that want to fly. It all boils down to the money, doesn't it? Even after all my communications recently and over the decades, we still don't receive regular or adequate financial income or support. For this reason, and among many more, the current situation is unbearable for any righteous soul on this earth. About the past monopolies and those that are about to go down, the famous comedian Roseanne recently said that all business is organized crime. However, HuHub is meant to be a multi-purpose tool rather than an overarching company. It will utilize a radical idea that has never been done before. It will pay its users. Furthermore, as the software becomes more understood, some may say it is meant to manage 8 to 9 billion people and startup, but that wording is foolish, as if the sons of God were that controllable. So it is not a management machine, rather more like a rope, to help the new fish pull themselves out of the hell they dug themselves into. HuHub, therefore, is like a rope, or a ladder descended from heaven, having been given divinely over a long period of time. I need to include this disclaimer that I am not a proponent of war as the first measure of negotiations in times of great trouble. I prefer diplomacy. Yet there is no doubt that the world is at war. We are dealing with all types of wars, from big ones to personal battles, and sometimes those are both the same thing, but only diced into the greater collective batter, like baking a cake. You put a little vanilla in the mixture and it becomes abstracted in the chemical processes of blending and the heating while it cooks. And in the end, all parts taste at least a little like vanilla, which hopefully is a better ending than this dark subject as follows. Every Kabbalist learns about the evil inclination and the demand it places on players here in this 5D chessboard. Too many people have chosen human sacrifice, however, that is not the way. This is why times had to change, or else human sacrifice would be a perpetual problem, continually bound with the soul, and from there the currency and everything of matters. That is why we are at war constantly. In the crosstalk, I learned that whenever a soul is called upon to become a star, to ascend, it's like a type of judgment that happens while we think we're alive but haven't yet died. It is perceived as a time of only static local memory, disconnected. In that event, to alleviate the condition of such suffering, the demonic construct overlord tries to force a person to destroy themselves or destroy others. The old solution to that problem was sacrifice. Oftentimes, a person would sacrifice their own children or someone born on the same day. Sometimes people sacrificed a spouse or someone that they were trying to emulate, such as a god. I can do none of the above. So we're at war and you get to enjoy the ripple effect of it. The ripple effects are due to my refusal to comply with the devil down here in hell. Sheol, dirt, good old dirt. And if you find yourself here with me today, I would like to introduce a third alternative option into this Boolean binary hell. Under the banner of mercy, I will not destroy it completely, but I will help to burn it up, to transform the energy of it, to reconfigure, reconstruct, recycle, and renew. Before cooking, we must cashier the kitchen. We need to exterminate the vermins that may get into our food and taint it, as you can see here. Houston, we have a problem. The grocery stores and restaurants are nearly empty now. The whole town is out of money. People can't pay for their groceries at the counters. It's more common than ever for people to eat food or graze while they move around inside the grocery stores. So you got to check everything you buy because people are so hungry. This demonic construct is buggy with moldy idols. It's time to smash the idols. It's time to smash our own guitars, so to speak. I included the latest video update from Benjamin Fulford, who made many good points, which I agree with, many of them. And while on the subject, I want to say to Ben, hi old friend, not sure if you remember when we researched together on the earthboppin.net forum many years ago. Here's a tip for you in bot world. Don't flash an invisible handful of rings around in the hood. And it's good those are secure because they often get washed down the drain. So while cashiering the kitchen, remember to fight fire with fire, which is just what I did on CO, Conquer Online, with my maxed out level 140 fire Taoist, originally named Indigo. I used some cool character map lettering to make her name look extra special. And after she was big and bad, the game changed and threw out half of her name. And now all that remains is Ego. True story. For some more bad news in hell, the bots are trying to thwart us at the patent office. And my favorite Rebbe says there's no such thing as depression, only sadness due to separation, which I agree. And he speaks subtly about the job of angels around the 24-minute mark on the video. It should be known that when I first started working with the AI art software, I noticed from other people's work that the architectural lines were skewed. In fact, they were so far off no art teacher of mine would have ever approved. Every piece of AI-generated architecture would have been an automatic failure in any of my art classes. However, I hope to change that, as I will now describe. The image to the left is among the earlier images that the AI generated for koi ponds, when Brian Prater's formula for over-unity was applied. By working with the bot and including various artistic principles, I taught the bot how to present three-dimensional spaces correctly with properly aligned geometric perspective lines in architecture and three-dimensional space. After months of this type of work, I progressed into harder concepts such as koi ponds, and after some time it resulted in what looks like a type of salmon popping out of the water. This is the original example before it was upgraded into a larger image that has been shown in previous videos. No two art pieces are ever exactly the same, or at least that is how the AI software was programmed when these images were generated. Also, I want to shout out to President Trump here for calling out Big Pharma for causing autism in children. Thank you for that. In summary, I hope you have learned a great deal through this unique installment of Egg-Gnosis Part 11. As we cross the threshold to the future, let us remember what matters most, and that is what matters to the most people most of the time. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video. Subscribe to this channel for HuHub Humanitarian Software 208 on YouTube. Comment to us there or on our forum, which is free to join at huhub.tech, which has an icon to take you to the forum. For now, at least, our communications are a bit sporadic, but I find a way to monitor email as seen here. Ta-ta for now.